this? You had or you hadn't? And yeah, I have the potion. I'm ready. And so maybe I've accidentally given them a little extra time to move the chess pieces around when they think I'm not looking. But what that means is they're now engaged and they're thinking about how are we going to get through this next thing, or what is the next mission we're going to try to uncover. And if it's not in the middle of a sort of an action sequence, it's like, all right, previously you had established that Professor Cinnamore was behind the plot to destroy the world with the comet of 1882, and you were checking out the bank, and you were doing this, and what were you doing? And then it's like, oh, right, I was going to examine if the Iron Bridge could be magnetized to be turned into a comet attracting device. Great, okay, you do that. So you make that roll, and now you're checking out the bank, so you're talking to the teller who remembers the Jesse James robbery, and what are you going to ask her about the Jesse James robbery, or did you have something else? Well, I want to know about that. And so we just sort of start feeding in, and it's just sort of like a glide path, really, more than it's a warm-up, right? Yeah. So that's... I don't know that that's a particularly effective approach for anyone except my group, but I find it works
when
pretty
you
well.
put it that way, it makes me realize that without thinking about it, one of the things that we do in my group is that we almost never have everybody there. My group, just because of the way it is that from week to week somebody's missing. So that next week I go, somebody tell...
Raise up a child as you would wish him to go on.
Somebody tell Marty what happened. Somebody tell Ann what happened. And then now they're doing that, and I'm like, cool. So, and then we'll roll right into play. But so, I mean, there are lots of little things that would do. And having it ritualized, the thing that you do every week, can be super helpful, but...
yeah, some groups play theme songs, or...
Yeah.
There's one group that's running a Knights Black Agents game, and they put on the web, on the YouTube, the opening credits of the TV show that is their characters. And so their ritual, their warm-up, is to hit play on the YouTube and show the opening credits of the thing, or maybe to do a tag scene and then show the credits. And that's how they warm up. So it can sound dumb, and if it doesn't emerge organically... you don't want to say, well, now we're going to light the candle of play.
Well, I know players who very effectively do that, but if it's not working for everybody.
And if it isn't organic, right, you can't force that stuff.
Yeah.
So whatever is the way that you signal play is happening now, and ideally it should be what was happening a week ago, what was happening when we last stopped. And either you can start it up in medias res, you're like, take the page up, and here are all our miniatures. Or you can, say, and you were there, and you were there, and you were there, and you were there, and roll for initiative, because now there's a bunch of allergic gnolls coming after you, or whatever.
Right. Hypoallergenic gnolls.
How many times do you present a clue and your players are not catching on? And I'm not talking about, they're trying, well, we don't actually want to go that way, we want to go this way, before you just result to the, sequencing neon arrow going, story was here, here's the point you're missing. I mean, how far do you...
By and large, if they haven't caught it in 3 tries, then they're never going to catch it, and you just do something else. But that's just my, falling back on, primate neurology. No human being can actually contain, can actually think about anything more than 7. Right? You can't think of more than 7 examples of anything simultaneously. And fewer than 3 feels forced.
Yeah.
You only got one chance. It's like, I could have been lollygagging. What if I was lollygagging? And 2, it's like, bam, bam, that feels wrong. But 3, that feels like enough. And simultaneously, if you're feeding them 7 clues to the same thing, first of all, you have wasted a god-awful amount of time. And they can't be expected to remember them anyway. So I would say 3 clues and you're out. If they haven't got it in 3, then they missed it, and whatever bad thing they were trying to stop is going to happen. And so the next thing they know, the floor is covered with, gnoll viscera or whatever, and it's like, well, I don't think that we wanted that to happen. How did that happen? What did we miss? And then maybe they'll go back and go, oh, right, we didn't turn off the eviscerator. That was on me. I did that. Or whatever, right? But I would say that the 3 strikes and you're out is a perfectly solid model. And because we're Americans, we've internalized it in baseball, so it feels fair.
So no clue by 4s, no like, here's the thing.
Sometimes you get a clue by 4, but sometimes life hands you a clue by 4. It's like, oh, I wonder if I wonder who shot up Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru's hut. Who could it possibly have been?
Right, and to me it's a question of the cost-benefit situation. If the question is, all right, well, Luke is now all set to do a 3-movie revenge picture Western series against the Tuscan Raiders because they killed Aunt Beru. Wait, whoa, Luke, that's not what happened, right? Then there's a level which the GM should just say, look, your character is an expert in this galaxy. It was the Stormtroopers, dude.
Or
What do you do?
your GMPC says, no.
Right.
Look at
These
the
blast
the-
points
the-
are too
the-
accurate for any
the-
Tuscan Raiders. Yeah.
Only the Imperial Stormtrooper has
Are
fired
allegedly
this
so
one.
precise.
Or allegedly so precise. Or so precise in specific atmospheric conditions.
Only stormtroopers miss in this way.
Yes. Only stormtroopers can kill defenseless huts so precisely. You know, people running around, oh, they're terrible at that. Poor Aunt Beru's rheumatism did for her. Yeah.
Okay, I have tried the talk with your players thing. I am not willing to go to the kick your friends out thing, because they're generally good people.
Doesn't matter. I mean, generally good people who talk during movies, you don't take them to the movies.
Okay, this is true, Robert. But,
You were just recorded saying that.
I know, that's absolutely right when I say that, because it's amusing. But the questions of electronic devices at the gaming table.
Oh,
It
yeah.
took an incredible force of will to keep them away from my Ravenloft game, but after that, most players that I've met now seem to view it as almost an imposition if I say no laptops, because they're like, well, we have all our PDFs on our laptops or something, you know. So how do you deal with the presence of devices at the gaming table if you've already tried to get rid of them? Or give me a better way to get rid of them.
I
will accept you.
mean, here's the thing.
Yeah.
In my game right now, sometimes people have got their laptop open and they're sometimes looking at the PDFs, and sometimes they're on Wikipedia looking up historical data to try and catch me out. And sometimes they're looking up historical data to help me out. And sometimes they're looking to see how the Blackhawks are doing. At some point, I treat it like I'm a college professor. They paid tuition. They're here. If they want to waste time and do nothing and they're not interfering, they're grown people. I can't force someone to stop.
That's brilliant.
What I can do is I can just keep playing with the people who are engaged, and if I come up with a really tasty hook to dangle past Joe Laptop, I can say, hey Joe, just in case you're curious, the old man mentioned something about the Emerald of Vendikar. And Joe's like, oh, the Emerald of Vendikar. Oh yeah, I wanted that. I go talk to the old man, and then you run a little scene with Joe.
Right.
You don't reward him for being on the laptop, but you every now and again you trail, are we interested yet, Joe? Joe, are you here today? And then when there's going to be a fight, Joe has to fight because, you know, they're going to be shooting at him. That's pretty easy to keep Joe engaged. But if Joe just wants to check out and he's got my guys walking around, he's carrying a mace, that's his gig, he's a mace carrying dude, fine. There's a guy walking through the background carrying a mace, not doing anything. Joe gave up his Monday, he's here, he's playing with you, he's a grown-up. Sorry. I mean, you can say, if it's a Ravenloft, I think is a great example. You say, this is a horror game. We're trying to establish an atmosphere. And if you can't contribute to the atmosphere, I'm going to have to ask you to not be in the Ravenloft game. You can be in the Forgotten Realms game, you can be in the Traveler game, you can be in any other game, but Ravenloft really, you've got to get together and be horrified.
Right.
And we can't do that if you're looking up Blackhawks.
If I can hear Candy Crush.
Right, yeah. And that is, no, if you can hear it, shut it off.
Yeah.
It has to be silent and invisible.
And that, to me, because I had a real problem with this in my playtest group for a little while, and I had a little bit of a problem with it in a group that I play at an office somewhere. It wasn't really a problem, I'll get to that in just a second. But with the playtest group, it's because this is some of our only chances to see each other. So when we're seeing each other, it's like we spend too much time catching up, and then we pick out what our characters look like, whatever we're doing. We're using our devices at first fruitfully, and then I have to say something 3 times because I have to say it to everybody in the moment I have when they're looking at me, before they go back to their device. And what I discovered was that they just didn't realize, because they're engaged the whole time with something. They didn't realize the extent to which they were being disruptive. So it wasn't a matter of saying, and that's the thing is where you ask Joe Laptop, you're like, well, he paid his tuition, he's allowed to sit here and kind of do nothing, just hang out. I have the same opinion with my players, except that, until they're disruptive. And the question is, there's a point where you're already feeling disrupted, and Joe didn't realize that that was happening. So part of that is something like, have a policy. I mean, you could be cold and calculate and say, I have a policy on how many times I'm going to repeat the same thing. And that's a way of kind of saying to Joe and everybody, without singling somebody out, but saying, oh, because it has to come up, he said to repeat stuff. I'm going to try not to make him have to repeat stuff. But
Yeah,
the
I
other
mean,
thing
my policy is
tell
I'm not
his friends.
repeating stuff.
Right,
If
exactly,
you missed
yeah.
it, well, too bad.
Ask
You're
the
carrying a
player-
mace. You're a
Ask the
happy
player
guy.
who was paying attention.
Yeah.
But so part of that is to also make sure that I personally don't approach it in like the rule is no laptops, but I do it as I just spent 20 minutes describing the same thing 3 times. We get to play every couple of weeks sometimes because of our scheduling and stuff. So it was an appeal that I made. In fact, actually, in the new year was sort of can we find a way to do this better with the devices and stuff? And everybody was agreed because people were like, yeah, I should stop playing my Marvel video game on my phone when it's not my move.
Yeah.
But then the other situation that I had was we have a Slack channel for one of my games, so there's a little chat room going on. And so sometimes somebody will be at their laptop and then I will type to them, I can see you, or whatever, and they'll be like, oh, right, sorry. And the other thing is that they will be talking to each other in character so that they can do little side scenes, and I'm not privy to it. They'll let me know when it's my turn. But then we had a point where we're playing, and I'm like, I literally cannot hear the people who are actually talking to me because I have 3 or 4 people scheming at me against each other at me through the chat channel saying, I'm doing this, and I'm doing this, and now that I suspect that he's doing this, I'm doing that, right? Put the phone down and roll initiative. It says, though, on your phone, I point out. See what you just did?
I keep my DM notes on this.
But, so it's, what's the great metaphor I like is fire is a great technology, but I don't like being on fire. And so it's about finding the right, combination of having a torch in the room and not hitting yourself with it. And so, to me, the answer isn't get rid of it, because there's so much great stuff that can be done with enhancing the games through that kind of through your everybody having a phone. The other thing, by the way, you can do is unplug your router.
Not necessarily a solution.
No, but
Not necessarily.
I discovered this on accident when my router went down during game, and it solved the problem for one session.
Hey!
Yeah, and I was like, I'll solve it later, and people got really bummed, and I was like, it's working.
All is proceeding as I accidentally foreseen. I don't mean to
Yeah,
I'm
I know.
just
I've been
checking
asking a lot of questions.
Oh,
and I wanna
there we
make
are.
sure
Yeah,
that-
when a game goes so far off the tracks, how do you successfully get it back on the tracks without making the players feel like they're being railroaded?
The question sort of presupposes that I had tracks. The way, and this is going to be a possibly useless answer to you, but I'm going to toss it out there anyway. I don't build necessarily a track. I have a story that's going to happen, but it's not dependent on the players. It's dependent, like I said earlier, on the bad guy, usually, or the factions in the world. My preferred game space is a sandbox, and I've got a bunch of plastic dinosaurs in the sandbox. And they can play with them or not, right? But at some point, those dinosaurs are going to come to life and start fighting them. If they have actually managed to get themselves out of the sandbox somehow, then we can take a moment and say, you guys realize that you've left the story entirely, like the setting entirely.
We've left the campaign.
This was
altogether,
about,
yeah.
The Three Musketeers. You are, I think, in Massachusetts.
And there's only 2 of them.
Was that on purpose? Are you saying you don't like musketeering anymore and you'd like to be fur trapping with voyageurs? Or was that an accident?
I accidentally ended up fur trapping in Massachusetts. How did I let this happen?
I mean, sometimes it's a thing like, I run a game of Caribbean piracy, and because I idiotically allowed the players to have any agency whatsoever, they turned into a game of nutmeg arbitrage. Like, we can make a lot more money as nutmeg arbitrators than we ever could as pirates, and it's like, you make a sound but utterly irrelevant point. So that was solved by, setting the island of Grenada on fire. Well, there you go. You are sitting with a hold full of nutmeg. It is maybe the last nutmeg left in the Western Hemisphere. The more people who know about it are going to be coming after you. What do you do with your nutmeg? You wanted this game to be about nutmeg? Bring it.
I should point out that all the pirates in the world have the impression that this is a game about
Pirates.
pirates. They're the pirates.
Yes. So, if the rail was, it's a game about the Rod of 7 Parts, and they got bored with part 3, and now they're off not looking for the Rod of 7 Parts, it's like, well, I guess the other 4 were found by the Anti-Paladin and the Necromancer, and that's what's going to happen.
Right.
Or if it's a game about, you were supposed to save the princess. Yeah, it turned out we didn't like her. So we left her to die.
Now it's a game about the consequences
Now
of
it's a
not
game
doing
about the prince rousing the
Yeah.
countryside to hunt you like dogs. I mean, find out the consequence of them leaving the story half told.
Mm-hmm.
Who finishes the story? How does it finish? what are the natural rejoinders to the players? And if the natural rejoinder is, we don't care, we're in Massachusetts. France can catch on fire for all we care. Great, now you're going against manitous and werebeavers and I don't even know what, but you're telling a different story. So,
right. This is one of those
there you go.
areas. One of those areas where the fact that you don't have an audience or a network breathing down your neck means that you can change the title of the series now and have it be about whatever you want, and the audience is going to say, "I'm very confused." It doesn't matter. The actors are having a great time.
Yeah, right.
The cast is all set.
This show was so
Yeah.
not about werebeavers for a while.
Right.
Do you remember season 1 when I think they were wearing hats?
When the show was called Musketeers.
Musketeer?
That was the same show, right?
Yeah, yeah.
All same name,
It
same
got
names.
sold to the Sci-Fi Channel.
Right.
The other thing I would do is
Basically pull up
example
from dusk till dawn.
Yeah,
I tend to lay
exactly.
track immediately in front of the players, which is to say I don't do a lot of pre-planning, and the only time I lay track is to lay those little Y intersections, right? So that I can limit roughly what part of the sandbox they're going to before the next session, so I don't build a bunch of stuff that they don't want to do. And I might do that overtly by saying like, so next week do you guys want to go kill some plastic dinosaurs or go, get nutmeg? And they'll tell me, and that's a very obvious thing where I make those branches. But other times I just do it in terms of dramatic situations that point at stuff that I know I have content for. And they might very well just crash the train, turn it over, set it on fire, and walk straight ahead. And that's fine. But now at least they have an idea that it's clear that they are doing that.
Yeah.
And so it's in that level the communication is still happening.
At least I know they did it on purpose.
Right.
That's
the worst is when we end
Oh,
up
we didn't
all
see
playing
the
the
fork
wrong
there.
game by accident.
Sorry.
Yeah, we didn't see. Oh my god. Yeah. And to me, one of the ways to do that, actually, by the way, also is to make physical spaces representing the choices that are in play. So there's a matter of, to go to farm nutmeg, so you've got an island for that. To go be a pirate, there is a ship right now you can go waylay, right? So that the option isn't just, which of these vague things do you want to do? But it's to say, do you want to go to the island where the nutmeg is, or do you want to go to Tortuga? And Tortuga's where all the pirates are who might think you're cool if you tell them what you do, and that's where the nutmeg is. And they say, oh, we want to go where the nutmeg is. You go, understood. Right? I understand. We're playing the nutmeg game now. Got it.
Got it.
But
Nutmeg it is.
I think, and this is a core knowledge of this is from just how dungeons work in Dungeons and Dragons, right? Is that they're essentially just giant flowcharts, and that when you reach a four-way intersection and you give them no information, they have no idea what to do, and they will obviously go off in a roughly random direction. But if you give them a two-way intersection, you say this one smells like somebody's made, like the chili cook-off is going on, and this one smells like everybody's been murdered. And they go, well, we have some information. I'm going to go get some chili, I think, or whatever. Then you're still making, dungeons are kind of big sandboxy railroad hybrids. And when you kind of start to think about the fact that all games are like that, even if they're in a sandbox, you can at any moment put up a couple of railings to make it easy for them to find the pit of Carcoon or the quicksand or the whatever. Then great. Then you can reward them making specific decisions without robbing them of the sandboxiness. And the other thing I always say about railroading is that, to me, is to remember that nobody hates a railroad, but nobody likes to be railroaded.
Yeah.
Railroad a noun is fine. Railroad the verb is not so fine. So, and that's just true with the way the word railroad works, and that's true in gaming too. And also, as they say, is that a railroad that goes where you want to go is, everybody loves that. Like, I was going there anyway. And a railroad that's really fun to ride is called a roller coaster. So, the question is just, it's when the players are no longer getting to make decisions about what they're doing. As opposed to making too many decisions, that just changes the processes to how much design you do during play versus before play, in my experience. So,
well, we're beginning to have sort of global restless leg syndrome here, it looks like. So is there anyone who did not ask a question who would like to ask the last question? All right, is there anyone who has asked many questions who would like to ask the last question?
just look at you. Hang on a second. I think we have a question over here.
Yeah. Okay, so I play with a GM who is very proud of the fact that he's been generating a world for ever and ever, amen, and that there's something to do anywhere you go. So he doesn't actually have a story,
Right.
but rather you happen to be doing this, and if you decide to leave this to do something else, it just stays kind of frozen over here, and you do this. Is that kind of, that seems to me like it's really good for D&D, but it might be bad for other things. Do you find that that's the case?
I mean, again, I have that world too, and it's called Earth.
Yeah.
So there's always story going on. If you didn't want to play involve yourself in Syrian civil war adventure. In Syria, you can play blow up meth lab adventure in Wyoming, or you can play exotic yacht race game. I've got a lot of story going on my game world always. So I think that's great as long as you don't actually freeze the story when they leave it. That story finishes out without the characters, and then there's more stuff happening over here when they get back to it. But I think that that's terrific. I think that it's a lot of effort to do it with an imaginary world, because you have to do a lot of die rolling and making things up and writing tiny little notes, whereas my co-GM, Jimmy Wales, just updates my game book, Wikipedia, and it's always telling me what's going on. So I don't really have to worry about it.
And to me, it's mostly a cost-benefit situation, which is I would be worried about the GM creating a bunch of stuff that will never be played. But if they're enjoying creating it, then who cares?
Yeah, it's their
right?
hobby.
And and that kind of breadth can be great for. To me, it's less about the game system than it is about what the campaign is about. Because like if you have campaigns in which decision paralysis results from having the entire world to go off in any direction, that's a factor in part of the campaign not telling us what it is about. And often the campaign and the game are the same answer. But in D&D, even that's not necessarily the case, where you could go 3 adventures without a dungeon. It's got dungeons right in the name, right? But or a dragon for that matter. But is that so? If you like Shadowrun, where you break into high stakes building or high expensive corporate headquarters and steal stuff, and the question is, look, here, I've made a list of 80 corporate headquarters and all their numbers and all their employee counts. If you go, this is just too much. I don't know what to do with all of this, right? That could be a problem. That could be a decision process. The player's like, I don't know which of these to break into. I have no way to sort this out. It's too much data.
Won't Shadowy Mr. Johnson help?
Right, exactly. Won't somebody come and point to the story part of this for me?
Yeah.
But that's so unlikely, just given the variety of games that exist, and it's about portrayal as opposed to what actual raw content is out there. In the same way, right? That every TV show that is fiction but is ostensibly set on our planet. There's so much stuff that TV show doesn't cover because it's a show about medical doctors in love, and not a show about their brother-in-law, or not a show about how they got their car repaired, right? Or all that stuff. Is whether or not the game wants to deal with the minutia of a setting is a different element than whether or not it is a good or bad or wise or foolish or good or sorry use of time to say, I have complete complete rush hour traffic statistics for Forgotten Realms. Okay, like, I don't know when we're going to use that, but if you had a good time writing it, that's cool.
You put it on the DM's Guild. Now you can make nickel upon nickel. Again, it's not about the game system. It's not. That seems very D&D. You can hex map everything. You can have that in Fate. I've mapped an entire fantasy world in Fate. I question your devotion to Sparkle Motion, but if you're having fun. I use Earth because I'm lazy and because it's more interesting. But that is basically what I've done. Is I've mapped my whole game world for 4 billion years. I automatically have a more detailed game world, and I can run anything in it. GURPS, Call of Cthulhu, Unknown Armies, whatever, right? So I don't see it as a Star Wars. I could. I don't see it as a
Reagan Star Wars. Reagan.
Oh,
Yeah,
no,
right.
definitely Ken could do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I could.
That's fair.
All is proceeding as I have foreseen. So so I don't see that. I see that as a perhaps poor use of that guy's time. But whatever. Like Will says, but I don't think there's anything inherent about D&D that encourages that, except that there's a random table.
I'm totally envious of both those players and that GM, and that I would love to be able to do that with more worlds. But I had to change systems too often for playtesting purposes and stuff. So.
It's partially because he just plays everything that he plays takes place in that world. So every game that he plays
Right.
contributes to it.
That's cool. Yeah, I think that's neat.
Okay, so, do we have anything else?
You tell us.
Brian, do you have a question? Your hand is up.
I did have a question. But I did want to let everybody know that we actually have a game inbound. And if we're ready to wrap up,
Yeah.
then we will say, everybody, thank you very, very much for coming.
Thanks a lot.
And Will Hindmarch, guys, the Ugly Ghostbusters.
Hite, ladies and gentlemen. Not a real science.
Not a real science.
Thank you so much. If anybody still wants to pick up something to have signed, we have a little bit of time for that. Ice cream at Jackson's tonight. We're gonna push it to 8:30 because we ran a little over here.
Sorry.
It's okay, it's fine. We'll probably be free by 8, but I just wanna make sure. There's gonna be a line anyway, right?
Yeah, right.
So if everybody's invited. I'm not buying everyone's ice cream, but totally come and have ice cream. We're gonna sit down, get a big table, and we can rap about this some more. So that's tonight, 8:30. Get there between sometime 8 and 8:30. You will be able to find a group of us in the line, and we're all good. We still have some copies of some of the materials up here on the table. We also have some copies up at the front, Dracula Dossier, Odyssey, and the Bones. And if you haven't gotten a term to bookmark, go ahead and take one if you remember the event.
And some bookmarks.
And I guess that's it. Thanks, everybody. We will be doing more of these, so keep an eye out.
Thank you, Adventure Game Store.
That's a really cool one.